Hello everybody and welcome back. And the party are 4 hexes away from Specularum going southward. The weather was good for the first day and they made 96 miles of travel and they've woken up the next morning. But what is the name of the ship they're on? Well, there were some good ideas in the comments section. I wrote them here and I'm going to roll a 6-sided dice for the one that it's going to be. Number 3 had 2 different suggestions, roughly the same. 5, Terentius. Okay, we'll go for the Terentius. Which I'm going to have to do my research as to where Terentius is. I think it's a city in the Thaician Empire, but we're on board the Terentius. The sails are billowing in the wind and the party wake up the next morning and they go out on deck to stretch their legs. If we are here, then apparently we are out of sight of land because we're told land is not visible unless you're within 24 hexes of it. Well, actually no, we can see this headland here because there is 1 hex between us, but we can't see that one. And that is reasonably accurate. If you're in the south coast of England, you can see France across the channel, which is 21 miles away, but it is quite a small little stripe on the horizon. So I should imagine if you're more than 1 hex away, which would be 48 miles, then unless you were looking at an extremely high mountain, you probably couldn't see land. So we have an order of events. We're checking for the direction of travel and we're going due south. Then you check for getting lost, but we have a navigator, so we won't get lost, especially since we're within sight of land. Check for the wind. Now this is where things can go wrong. 4, a light breeze. Right, oh dear, that means we move at 1/3 movement rate. So I'm gonna have to mark this off properly. So we made good wind on the first day, day 1. Day 2, the wind drops and we only make 1 hex. Right, now we check for wandering monsters on a roll of 5 to 6. I did pre-roll some wandering monsters just in case we did come across anything. And we don't on the first day. Right, so the first day is over and the party wake up on the second day. The ship is hardly moving. They're walking about deck stretching their legs. The captain is giving orders to the crew as to try and make some kind of headway in this light wind. It's a bit glum, but it means there isn't really that much work to be done. The captain tells the party to stay to the back of the ship, which is the poop deck, the stern, to not interfere with the work of the sailors. Other people come up on deck. We have Barton, the ship's doctor, and we have Kane, the man-at-arms, and it becomes apparent that neither of them are really that smart. The ship's doctor may have once been smart, but let's just say rum has rotted a few brain cells, but Kane looks like he was never going to be up to much upstairs. The cabin boy is running about the place, fetching water. There was some talk about the water in the comment section. It seemed rather expensive. I suppose you could justify the expense in the fact that you have to pay for the barrels and you also have to pay for the transport. And as has been pointed out, that the water probably, some of it would have been brewed into a very weak beer to sterilise it. In terms of money, they may have been overcharged for the water, but it's still necessary. The cabin boy seems to be the person doing the most work, and Liz says, I feel really sorry for him. He also has to help one of the sailors with the cooking. And then when it comes to meal times, which are staggered, he's the one that also has to serve up all the plates of really not that appetizing food. And when it comes to the rations, some of the rations will be dried and others will be fresh. Some things like spuds and onions and carrots and apples can last for a long time in a cellar, and essentially that is what the hull of the ship is, a rather cool cellar even in the heat on the upper decks. Now when it comes to spells, the captain has had magic users before, and he takes Sylvia and Malin to one side and says no fireball. Okay, you do not cast fireball on a ship. So Sylvia is going to swap her fireball out for a water breathing, and Malin is going to swap his fireball out for a lightning bolt. Okay. Well, as I said, day 2 was a bit of a washout, so everybody wakes up on day 2 to discover they're hardly moving. We're not going to get lost because we can easily pass by this island. I will check for wandering monsters. There aren't any, and so we have to wake up on day 3 and move into this hex. But how far do we travel? Are we still becalmed? 5. It's a moderate breeze. We managed to move 2 squares. So we're here on day 3 and we're passing by this headland and into the wide ocean. On day 3, check for wandering monsters again. There aren't any. And on day 4, the wind seems to be picking up a bit. And indeed, it's back up to proper speed and we're here on day 4. So much for it takes a week to get to the Isle of Dread. Okay, Donard has tried to make small talk with Barton, the ship's doctor, and it really isn't going anywhere. The guy keeps to himself and a little flask of rum. The cabin boy is running about the place. Liz is trying to work out who on board is part of her thieves guild, who is part of her rival thieves guild, and if anyone is a member of the Iron Ring. Nobody as yet has got their trademark tattoo of some manacles, but that would be a bit obvious. And she is coming out of the cabin on the morning of day 4, and the cabin boy runs past, scurrying about the place on one of his usual errands. And it occurs to Liz that if anyone knows anybody, then it would be him. And if she wonders if she will try and drop a hint to ask if anybody is acting strange or if anybody seems new to the ship. But that in itself might not mean anything because there's a good chance that the members of the Thieves Guilds could be regulars who do this kind of operation often. So she just stops the cabin boy and tries to make small talk and says, "What's for dinner today, young master?" And the cabin boy shrugs and says, "Dried beef and boiled cabbage." And Liz says, "Oh, thank you." And then she says, "Have you noticed anything unusual?" And he just shrugs and says, "No, ma'am," and runs off again. And it's not until later in the day Liz realises when they have dinner and the dinner is not boiled cabbage that she realises, why did the cabin boy say that? And then she remembers that is the code word she was given by the Thieves Guild. And she looks at the cabin boy, wonders, is he really the contact from the Thieves Guild? And then she remembers what the guildmaster said, which was that she will judge him on his appearance. And she just puts down her knife and spoon and thinks, yep, that's my contact. Right, we are officially in the expert book. The Night's Dark Terror did borrow some of the things from this book, and there were several maps that used a hex format rather than a grid, but the Night's Dark Terror did at times still rely on the basic rulebook. It had its own encounter table for wandering monsters. Things are slightly different in the expert book. There is the order of events for a day just for travelling in the wilderness. It is much the same as the dungeon crawl, except there is a chance of getting lost. That won't happen to us at sea because we have a navigator with us, unless the weather dictates otherwise. It says here the chance of a wandering monster is 1d6. But if you turn to here, you're given different chances depending on the terrain, and for ocean it's 5 to 6, with the caveat here that a roll of 5 indicates no encounter unless the ship lands at the end of the day. If so, a land encounter is used. And then there is a whole series here on ships, types of ships, the weather, and wind speed, encounters, and combat at sea. Now, we don't use a typical wandering monster table that we did in the Night's Dark Terror. You're given these 2 pages of tables. If you do roll for an encounter, what you do is you check the terrain the party are in, and in this case we would use ocean. and you're given a number of 1 to 8 to indicate the type of animal or encounter. And for an ocean, you have men, a flyer, 5 types of swimmer, and a dragon. So the odds are you will get something that swims in the sea. So after you've rolled what type, you then find that type on a different table, and I'll say, for example, use the swimmer table here. Then you roll a 1d12 to find out exactly what that is. I also thought we might look at some of the extra crew that are on board this ship, and that would include the cabin boy, the ship's doctor, and the man-at-arms, who is the hired muscle. I brought these 3 characters into the game for a couple of reasons. One might be that some of our party members might die, and it's good to have a replacement on hand, though I don't have a replacement for a mage or an elf. The other reason I thought it might be handy is because our party could split up into 2 sub-parties and explore parts of the island or find themselves in different circumstances. The main purpose of these 3 characters is to look after the ship and the sailors on board the ship. That is their number 1 priority. In the tried and trusted way of doing things in this game is you roll up some stats and then you try and find the most suitable character for those stats. So I rolled up 4 sets of stats. I didn't actually use the 4th. The first 3 were good enough, and it became clear what type of character each one should be. So if we look at cabin boy Archie, his stats were incredible. He threw a 12 for strength and intelligence and a 16 for dex, so it was obvious he would be the thief. And then I did the 2-for-1 stat swap to lower his strength and intelligence and up his dexterity. So he's been at this thieving business since about the age of 6, and he's about 14 at the minute. He's reasonably strong and wary, but incredibly dexterous. He's got a leather armor +1, so he's got a good low AC of 3, and he uses a short bow, and he's got a good low THAC0 of 13. Next up is the ship's doctor, Barton, and I rolled his stats, and he was the one with the highest wisdom, which is only 12, but it still is just good enough to be a cleric. His intelligence, however, was just 6, right? I suppose I could have swapped some strength for his wisdom, but he does get a +1 to hit and damage and a +1 to his armor class. And I thought at this level, level 6, he would have acquired at least some basic +1 equipment, including plate mail +1, a shield +1, and a mace +1. And then we have the hired muscle, Kane, and his strength was 17 and his wisdom was 11, and again I did some stat swapping, so he has an amazing strength of 18. He also has a low intelligence of 5, and he has plate mail +1. For all the characters, I gave them a chance to do some weapons training, which if you have an expert trainer means that you need to roll a 70% or less to succeed at becoming skilled. Both Archie and Barton failed. They rolled 90 something each. Oh well. Now Kane, whose basic job is to be a fighter, at level 6 you would have 2 opportunities to train. So I thought with him, since it is his job to be a fighter, the chances are though his family, which look after him, would pay for the training, and depending on whether or not he did well the first time, would they pay for another set of training? And the answer to that was yes. He threw a very low 6 for the first training in two-handed sword, so they paid again and he became skilled in a crossbow. I wish I had tried to go for a second level in the two-handed sword because he threw a 14 the second time, so he would have easily have passed that as well. He is a brute. His dexterity is not good, so he gets a -1 to his armor class. He gets a +1 to his constitution. His hit points throw was amazing. He threw 2 8s and 2 7s for a total of 32, +6 for his constitution bonus is 38, and the final 7 were made up from a 3 and a 4. So, apart from his armor class, which is 3, this guy hits like a truck. When you become skilled in a two-handed sword, you go from 1d10 to 2d6 +1, and he gets +3 to hit and damage. So his melee THAC0 was 12, and his damage is 2d6 +4, and that's just with a normal sword and no magical weapons. As a side note, after I had rolled up these stats and both these characters got a really low intelligence, and then I found pictures where it just so happened they both had red hair. That is when I made up their backstory that they are both cousins and brothers. So that is a brief introduction to the party. We wake up on day 4. We have to do the weather check to see what the wind is up to. So day 1 ended here. Day 2 ended here, day 3 ended here, day 4 ended here, so it is officially day 5. Oh, and that is not that good. That's another day of a moderate breeze, and we only moved 2 more squares, so day 5 ends here. Okay, well I have to roll for a wandering monster. There isn't anything, okay. Let's move on to day 6. And that's becalmed. Right, we don't move at all. Okay, I'm going to do a weather check for fog. What I did do for the weather in the past was I used the reaction roll table. And if we get a bad reaction, then we will either get rain or fog, or if it's a clear sunny day, we don't. So, right, that's bad weather. Very bad, so I'm going to say that's rain. And that's a 10. Uncertain. Will the rain last? And 7. It eventually goes away, but there is no fog. So after a day of sitting there in the perpetual wet, the party becoming quite despondent. This trip to the Isle of Dread, the wind has been pretty useless. At the end of day 6, they wake up on day 7. Well, the wind picks up again, and we move 3 hexes, and we end here on day 7. Do we encounter anything? We don't. So if the wind is good, it's still pretty miserable weather. It's raining. Yeah, it's raining hard. Okay, so they wake up in the morning of day 8, and where do they end up on the end of day 8? Oh no, so day 8 ends here. And there is no wandering monsters. And the weather is now torrential rain. Okay. So, where did they wake up on the end of day 9? Right, that's a bit better. That's normal. So another 3 hexes. So much for it take 1 week to get to the Isle of Dread. What happens on day 9? There is a wandering monster. Right, okay. Let's check the weather, by the way. That's a 9. That's possibly friendly. So yes, it looks like the heavy rain clouds are moving away. And yes, the sun comes out, and that's quite apt because I did pre-roll some encounters, well 2, and the first one was flyers, and it was 4 giant bees. Right, why giant bees are attacking us? Well, there is this small island here, so it is plausible they have come from there. So just as the sun comes out at the end of the day, perhaps it is the smell of the rum and the sugar which has brought them. But 4 giant bees come flying towards the ship. Now they may not attack. That's a 5. That's possibly attack. Roll again. Now that gives everybody a chance to get some kind of ranged weapon out. And that would include our cabin boy, Kane the fighter, Liz, Sylvia, and Carrick. The sailors do have weapons to defend themselves, but they are considered just ordinary men. These are not fighters. By the way, the cabin boy keeps his bow stowed in a locker on the deck. No, I'm going to have him not fight. I think it would be a bit odd if the cabin boy suddenly pulled out a bow and proved himself to be a sharpshooter. He is meant to be undercover. And that's 10. Uncertain. Roll again. The bees have come up to the ship. They're not certain as to where the smell of the sugar is coming from. And they're not certain about us. That's 9. Okay, well they eventually approved friendly, which I'm going to say is they just buzzed off. So that was the encounter at the end of day 9. Day 10. Oh my god, the wind has been terrible. Right, we moved just 2 more hexes to here at the end of day 10. Right, do we have another encounter? We don't. There are plenty of stores. We did have 2 months worth, which was 63 days. Okay. Wake up on the morning of the 11th day. Where do we end up? Oh no. Extremely light breeze, we move 1 hex. We don't come across anything. Right, day 12. I'll do a weather check. 7, that's uncertain, even though the wind is low. It looks like it might rain or it might not. Dark clouds are scudding overhead, looking grey, low, and kind of tattered. But they pass on by and save their rain for the mainland. Wake up on day 12. Where do we end up? So that's 3 more hexes. So we're there at the end of day 12. And there are no encounters. And the weather does not look good. Yep, it looks like it could possibly rain again. And it does, and heavy rain comes down. And I think those who are not used to sea travel are having a wretched time. In fact, Carrick, as a dwarf, always tries to have a strong constitution. His stomach is turning over and he looks quite ill. So where did they end up on the end of day 13? Okay, average again. We're here. And the weather is still not looking good. Yep, there are again cloud covers. And that is a 6. That's leave, but again they blow over. Now there was a day of really bad weather where the sky at night should have been overcast with no stars to navigate by, but we only moved 1 hex, so I should have used that as an opportunity to check for getting lost. Right, after 2 weeks at sea, they wake up on day 14. How far did they travel today? That's a bit better. That's 1 1/3, so that's 4 hexes. So yes, finally they make some distance, and I'll do a wandering monster check. And they do find something. Now this one is rather more interesting because this is a 9-headed sea hydra. Right, let's see how that goes. Right, what is a sea hydra? What is any kind of hydra? Well, I think most of us know what a hydra is from Greek mythology, but let us have a look at a new monster. Armor class 5, hit dice 5 to 12, and that depends on the number of heads it has. So you would roll a 8-sided dice and add 4. For every 8 points of damage a hydra takes, 1 head is destroyed. For example, if a 7-headed hydra took 18 points of damage, it would only attack with 5 heads in the next round. And you can create special hydra. They may breathe fire or have poisonous bites. A sea hydra. These monsters have adapted to water. They possess fins instead of legs. They are otherwise the same as their land-dwelling cousins. And you have flying hydra. Okay. This is a 9-headed hydra. How does this encounter happen? Well, I would say that the party are on board the deck of the ship, largely becoming bored. Carrick is feeling really woozy. They've been at sea for 2 days, and for a lot of it recently, they have seen nothing but ocean every day. It's all becoming rather the same. They pass a little island here, and for a moment Liz hopes that somebody will say, "Land ahoy, the Isle of Dread," but that is not the case. So in the midst of this boredom, in the midst of everybody thinking, another day, another sea, all of a sudden there's a massive bump on the hull. I am going to roll some dice. And despite bumping the hull, whatever it is does no damage to the ship. But all of a sudden everybody is on alert. There's going to be no surprise. But as 9 fearsome heads rise above the side of the ship, let's see who gets initiative. And it does. Right, there are 9 heads. I'm going to roll some dice. Orange dice for the party, green dice for the crew, and I will roll them 9 times for this first round to see who gets attacked. Whoever rolls lowest is a target. So that's a crew member. That's another crew member. That's a line from Galaxy Quest. That's another crew member. That's a party member. That's a crew member. That's a party member. That is one of each. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And last one. And that is another crew member. Oh dear, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 crew members are going to be attacked. Right, they are normal sailors with an armor class of 9. And I'm going to say they have 8 hit points each. So the Hydra just has a THAC0 of 11. So it only needs to roll a 2 to hit. It can do a critical miss. So first crew member is killed outright. It's snapped up in the Hydra's jaws and is swallowed. Second crew member survives and is down to 6 points. Third crew member hits and is down to 4. Another sailor hits and is killed. Another one survives with 2 hit points. And another one survives with 7 hit points. Now it attacks 3 party members who will roll the lowest. And that is Sylvia, Malin and Liz, who are our 3 weakest. The one on Sylvia, she has an AC of 1 and it misses her. The one on Malin, his AC is 8 and it takes 3 points off him. He's down to 13. And the one on Liz, it hits her just for 2 points. She's down to 23. Right, it is the movement round. The sailors, Malin and Liz, are going to run. I'm going to say that Kane is on board the ship as well, not Barton, the ship's doctor. He is under deck rearranging his medicine, which comes in a small hip flask. We don't have any missile weapons. We're on to spells. Is Donard gonna cast Strike? No, he's not. He's just gonna fight. So we'll do Carrick, who hits AC 3. That's enough to hit the Hydra, which has AC 7, and he does 12 damage. It's down to 36, and it loses 1 head. I'm gonna have Kane, whose stats I have to remember, who does 2d6 plus 4 damage. Right, remember this guy's a beast. Well, his THAC0 is 12. He misses, beast or no beast. And then we have Donard, who hits and does 7 damage. The Hydra is down to 29. And lastly, we have Sylvia, who does +2 to hit and damage. And she misses. Right, that was round number 1. Round number 2. And it wins initiative. Right, how many heads does it have left? It has lost 19 hit points, so that is 2 heads gone. It has 7 attacks left. It has 3 targets. I'll do 2 on each of Donard, Carrick and Kane. No, it has 4 targets. and I will do one on Sylvia. Donard has an AC of -2. That hits him for 14 points. He's down to 28. 2 heads on Carrick. That one hits him for 3 points. He's down to 29. 2 on Kane. His AC is 3. This has a THAC0 of 11. That misses. Lucky him. And there's 1 on Sylvia. And it fumbles her. Right, so our round. Missiles first. Liz is going to try and shoot from the other side of the ship. And she hits and does a massive 8 points of damage. This is down to 21. That's another head gone. Spells. Malin is going to cast Magic Missile. And he does 10 points of damage. It's down to 11. Right, melee. Let's have Carrick, who just hits and does the 12 points of damage needed to kill the 7-headed Hydra. Okay, that's our first sea encounter. Let's clean up the deck. Okay, well, there are some of the Hydra heads are on the deck, and some of the many necks of it are draped over the edge and are spurting blood. But it doesn't take long for the sheer weight of the body to sink beneath the waves and to drag all its remains under with it. And there are 2 sailors who have gone. Their bodies are dragged under as well. We have 4 injured crew members, and we have Donard and Carrick badly injured as well. So let us do some healing. We've got quite a lot of healing. I'm going to use the Staff of Healing on Carrick, who is back up to full health. I'm going to use it on Donard. He's back up to 34. I'm going to do 2 Cure Light Wounds on him. Right, he's back up to 38. And the ship's doctor finally comes on board. He's going to cast a Cure Light Wounds on Donard. Our own cleric is back up to full health. He has got another Cure Light Wounds he's going to cast on a crew member who is back up to full health. Sylvie is going to go down to the cabin, come back with her sword that does Cure Light Wounds and cast it on another crew member who is back up to full health. And the other 2 are on 6 and 7 from their max of 8. Okay, they can go and rest up for the day and heal up. That was the end of day 14, and the party will wake up on day 15 and we'll check the weather and we'll see how far we get. But all that will happen next time. I will see you then.